The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. Will you all rise for the honorable and extraordinarily handsome Maynard Bangs?
Be seated. I didn't even write that. He just said it. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of the people versus the village. This 2004 film tells the story of a 19th century village besieged by mysterious creatures just outside their borders, forbidding any of the inhabitants to leave. For those unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Haslar, you're appearing on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, indeed, and proudly, Your Honor.
You may begin your opening statement.
Your Honor, gentle members of the jury, we need not fear the abysmal horror of the village, for we have the magic rocks. I of the prosecution seek to the charge of... Sorry, the laughing distracted me. I of the prosecution seek to charge this film being guilty of 3 counts of being bad, and there can be no doubt to the depth of its guilt on these charges. Count 1, the marketing. We were sold a Bryce Dallas Howard-less film in which a Salem-esque village has made a truce with supernatural creatures living in the woods. Joaquin Phoenix walks into this dark, moody, Fangorn forest of horrors as the promise is made by the producers to us that the truce is ending. We were delivered no such film. Count 2, the bait and switch. Lured into our theater seats, we instead got exactly 2 scenes where these creatures make an appearance. The rest of the film? Well, the rest of the film is nuts and bolts of period piece romance between Joaquin Phoenix and Bryce Dallas Howard. It's a grift, plain and simple, and we cannot abide it. Count 3, the plot holes. Desperately trying to sell this lie and make the story they're actually telling make sense, they give us brief answers that only make us ask even more questions. And down we go until in a very unsatisfactory ending with a different twist, nowhere near delivering on the intensity of the one we were promised. In short, jury members, guilty, 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 and off to movie jail you go, the village, and may your sentence be long and terrible. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Haslar. Mr. LePire, you're appearing on behalf of the defense. Please, thank you, Ryan. Please present your opening statement.
Before we get to my opening statements, I motion for a mistrial, as the prosecution failed to send me a list of the 3 big words I should expect to be used today. How could I possibly present my case with such an oversight?
Rejected. Our dozens of fans are expecting an episode today.
Your Honor, members of the jury, my esteemed colleague on the prosecution, and everyone else here not sitting on a seat cushion, in preparation for this trial, I did not just rewatch The Village. I went through M. Night Shyamalan's entire directorial credits, excluding Praying with Anger and Wide Awake, both of which I just couldn't track down. But this does include The Happening, After Earth, and The Last Airbender, because I'm a dedicated movie nerd. Some might argue I'm just a glutton for punishment. I also watched the faux sci-fi documentary, The Buried Secret of M. Night Shyamalan, which was made while he was making The Village and caused a big stir for being 1000% fake.
Yeah.
More to the point, The Village is a great film that did admittedly suffer from terrible marketing. It was sold as being a full-blown creature feature horror film. Not just that, but the first 100% horror movie from the hottest director at the time, M. Night Shyamalan. As The Sixth Sense is not a horror movie, it's a drama dealing with supernatural entities. Unbreakable is a slow burn superhero origin story with no horror to be found, and Signs is a low-key alien invasion film. So to have a movie marketed as a horror movie from this person, expectations skyrocketed. But we cannot hold the movie nor the filmmaker responsible for such a grievous mistake from the marketing department. While The Village trades in the iconography of horror movies, much like Ghostbusters before it, the movie springboards off of those well-known tropes to look at something else. Now, don't misunderstand, I am not claiming this is as good or as iconic as Ghostbusters. Strictly using it as an example of a film that hits all the beats of a horror movie, but is not one. What Shyamalan has crafted, in fact, is a look at the desperate lengths people will go to for love. All forms of love, not just romantic, but the love of siblings, the love of parents, unrequited, the volatile and jealous that you don't know how to control until it boils over into a rage kind of love, the love and bonds of friendship, and a love of your community. Shyamalan explores all of these while delivering an intense and engaging experience that has several sequences that can take the viewer's breath away. As such, I'm here to defend why it's in my top 5 favorite movies of all time and prove once and for all that it is a good movie.
Thank you very much. Very passionate and straight to the point. Mr. Haslar, you may present your first exhibit.
Okay. Well, in his opening statement, my esteemed colleague does admit that the branding failed. But just to go over it real quick, just in case you'd like to rebuttal them, the trailer promises scares, and there are very little scares in this period piece romance. You would agree with that, wouldn't you, sir?
Yeah, this is not a horror movie really at all. It uses the ideas and iconography of a creature feature, but is not one.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please keep that in mind while delivering. This will hurt your expectations when you actually watch the film. In fact, I know M. Night Shyamalan has said that as one of his biggest regrets as a filmmaker is how he and the producers marketed this film. All right, so let's proceed to the opening. The very first 4 things that happen are bad. We open on a grave that's too small for the wooden coffin that the elder is crying over. The very next thing that happens is we hear William Hurt say, "We ask ourselves in times like this if we made the right choice in settling here. We've been grateful for the time we have given." That's it. You know, he's not saying anything. I'm wondering why he wanted to deliver that dialogue at all. The very third thing that happens is we hear howls in the woods of these unseen creatures. Now, you wouldn't know, given the actual twist of the film, what these are. It's actually in a deleted scene that tells us that there's these chimes that the elders set up that make these howls. What we actually get in the film, which is what you, ladies and gentlemen, the jury have to judge it by, is just a very brief explanation by William Hurt that says, well, we made those sounds. That's it. The very fourth thing that happens is there are children that are gathering over a skinned animal, which is our promise that something sinister is happening. Now, these skinned animals, we've learned, is done by the village idiot, because, spoiler alert, the creatures do not exist. And he's apparently strewing these creatures across town for reasons. It never really tells us. The only reason we know that it's him is a very brief line of dialogue where an old woman goes, "The animals!" That's it. Would you care to rebuttal those 4 points, good sir?
I'm going to rebuttal them, but first I'm going to start with the actual opening of the movie, and that's the credits. It starts off with very eerie credits set up over just shots of like silhouettes, not shots, but silhouettes of trees as everybody's names appears, all the actors, the writer, director, producer, all that good jazz. And James Newton Howard's score is just this driving, intense thing that instantly hooks the audience into, all right, I'm into this. What is about to happen? What will I be in line for as it builds up? And then we open on a funeral. I did not notice that the coffin was the hole was too small for the coffin. What I did notice was the use of color in that sequence and the use of color throughout the movie. The coffin is just the color of sanded wood. So it's this bright bright color against the dirt and the green grass and the dark clothes everybody else is wearing. And it's an interesting contrast because normally death is a dark color, but in this case it's not, because with the themes of the movie, one of them is not running away from things you can't control. How spoilery are we getting with this, by the way?
Completely spoilery.
All right, cool.
We have a warning in the beginning, sir. You may spill your guts.
All right, so they make the village in modern times to get away from death because they are grieving the loss of a father, of a sister, of a brother,
Sons.
I think. Son, yeah, they're just grieving all this so much that
so you're saying the twist, sir, in this film is that the village is not actually in the 19th century, it's modern day.
Correct.
I will be getting into that a bit later, Your Honor.
So when he's asking if it was the right idea to settle here, and they're thankful for the time they have, the coffin being bright is just them learning to have to accept that death is always around them. And that's why Brendan Gleeson has that line near the end of the movie where he says, death is just part of life, or pain is a part of life. We know that now. Because it's about these people learning that you can't escape that. It's another reason that the color red, the bad color, quote unquote, it keeps popping up in nature. You can't escape it. It's going to be everywhere. People are going to run into it, even when you try hiding that nature. So eventually, somewhere down the line, we don't see it in this movie, this experiment will fail. But it wasn't meant to last. It was meant to be a place of healing for these specific people. And they have come to be, by the end of the movie, they have healed as much as they ever can, given that death and heartache and heartbreak still happens to them.
And, traumatize their children in the process. But hey, who am I to judge, right?
We'll go into that, prosecutor. What are some of these things that'll traumatize these children?
Actually, I'd like to get into that a bit later when I talk about the real twist, if I may here.
Oh, fuck me then. Okay.
Okay. So what the whole thing that was promised to us is the fake twist. So the creatures being called those we do not speak of, but they sure can't seem to shut up about them. Why are they called this anyway? Like, it's not like they built this legendarium. It's just like copying Voldemort, because it kind of sounds cool. But they do refer to them as the creatures often. So, like, just calling them those we do not speak of just rings as silly in my head.
It sounds cool.
It does sound cool, but it means very, very little.
The creatures are never given a name. And so in order to just keep it in hushed tones, the entire village, or at least the elders when they started it, decided that they wouldn't talk about it. So I feel like by never giving them a name, it became either you just refer to them as the creatures or as this hushed thing. So it's those we don't speak of because we don't talk about them. I think that just popped up organically over the 20 some odd years of the village's existence.
But when you're talking a lot about those we do not speak of, doesn't it like ring a bell in your head that, hey, we're doing something silly here?
I don't think so. They often
like Kurt has them in like the class gathered around. He's like, oh, those we do not speak of. Let's talk about them.
They often refer to Voldemort in similar terms in the Harry Potter books, and maybe that's silly to you, but it definitely worked there.
Little later, Jesse Eisenberg is standing with his back to the forest, and he hears creature grunts and growls. Now, how do these grunts and growls happen? I would like to point a little bit later in the film, Adrian Brody apparently makes these noises as well, and it's never quite explained like the wood chimes are in a deleted scene in this movie.
One, they are in a animal and nature preserve, so some of those grunts and growls are just going to be the animals who live there already, and
that should be shown to us in the film, sir. It makes us ask a lot of questions since this is apparently a big twist.
I didn't catch all that, sorry.
I believe that should be revealed in the film because that's like the big twist, is the big crux is that's leading us to believe that these creatures are real, at least in the first half of the film. So to make us like make that jump that, hey, could be a bear, that's it doesn't connect those dots for us, and it should, because this is a big part of the story and what we were sold.
I sure hope they wouldn't keep a
you're
bear
going
in
off
their
of
nature
what you were
preserve.
sold on, and now what the movie is, and you cannot hold the movie accountable for something it isn't. Much like when this court saw the house that Jack built, you can't find that just because the movie is dealing in how was it put for that one, in ideas and themes that were used before, as long as it's retelling them in an interesting or original way for its audience, you can't necessarily blame them for doing that. And this is something similar, in my opinion, where once you, going much further into the movie near the end, once you reveal it's modern day, they're on a nature wildlife preserve, that's when you connect all the dots right there. It's, oh, some of those noises are just the animals, whether it's a bear.
But Adrian Brody also makes these noises as a creature.
He does. He whimpers a lot after he falls into the thing, and I think
more than that, when she's hiding behind the tree, he's growling.
The suit itself.
I'm sorry, I spoke over you.
So. It's never properly explained in the movie.
Correct. As Adrian Brody when he's like hunting her down, not just when he falls in the pit, but like when he's like, when she's hiding behind the tree.
Yeah, and during the, I guess, attack, for lack of a better term, on the village, you hear them doing that weird thing. So it's something in the way the suit must have been made, and yeah, you are never told what that is or how they did it, but I don't think that's what the movie's actually focusing on at all. It's much more interested in showing how love can hurt you, how love can heal you, how love can change you, and that is epitomized in, of course, the Joaquin Phoenix.
But you can't just drop a big part of the story you were sold to, like, oh, well, it's really about how love can hurt you. You still sold me monsters. You're telling me there's a twist that the village elders are doing it. You have to tell me how to complete your movie.
You're being hung up on the marketing, but
and the execution of the film. Like, it opens up with them telling these monsters exist, and I believe they exist up until halfway through.
Yeah, and halfway through they go, okay, they don't exist. The elders were doing it. And if you want to know how, then that's on you, but that's not what the movie is focused on. The movie is much more interested.
The movie's moved on past its plot points, good people. That was so first act, audience. Quit nagging us with questions about how we did it.
Defense, if you'd like to complete your rebuttal there, and then back to prosecution.
Sorry, that was hilarious. Okay, sorry, I forgot where I was. The movie's much more interested in following Ivy's trajectory, as she's always been a confident person throughout the movie, but as it progresses, as her love for Joaquin Phoenix's character of Lucius Hunt is cemented, if you will. They after her sister, played by Judy Greer, Kitty, gets married, Ivy Walker, the Bryce Dallas Howard character, is now free to entertain all options. That option is Joaquin Phoenix. They announce their love. Adrian Brody, in a jealous rage, stabs Lucius Hunt, and then the movie pivots from being about the creatures to about her determination to make the love of her life win. She tells her dad, who's played by William Hurt, when she's asking him to go to the villages, that if Lucius Hunt dies, all that is life, all that is dear to her in life, dies with her. And that is what the movie is actually about. Because again, the monsters play a minor actual part of the movie. Yes, the first half of the movie is telling you they exist, but they exist because the people who created the village wanted their community to be safe, and they didn't want outsiders coming in. They didn't want the townsfolk to go outside and see anything because they wanted them all safe. So it's a
and they don't see like the terror in their eyes as these kids are just
desperate move for love that does not work. It's a bad idea, but it's a bad idea born out of a sweet, sincere thing.
If I saw my kids just like freaking out like over the littlest things, I might think I made a wrong turn there. So let's talk about the bad color. Just a bit. There's 3 points I'd like to point out. One, Adrian Brody is like freaking out that he's got the bad color on his hands after he stabs Lucius Hunt. Right? But he skinned 1 million animals and apparently just strews them across town. So he should be very familiar and used to this bad color being around. 2, Bryce Dallas Howard gets blood on her shirt and she walks around town nobody says nay. I mean, obviously the villagers, the elders know that it's all
I
farce,
object to
but
this point. She's walking around with blood on her shirt after it's discovered that Lucius Hunt has been stabbed. It is immediately after that.
Right.
It's not a day later or something like that. So everybody's dealing with the fact that this guy's lying, dying.
But no one's like, hey, here's your shawl, cover up that bad color.
I'm going to sustain that from the prosecution. I think that is a good point. Once she had blood, she probably, because it's the bad color, she probably should have immediately changed.
And if she doesn't, or the elders don't, then at least other townfolk should, because they believe it. And 3, I see the bad color at least 2 times accidentally. There's a kid wearing red in the wedding, and then I saw like some sort of gas can or something like that on a porch. So that's just obviously they missed it, but I saw plenty of bad color in this village.
I did miss the gas can. There is somebody wearing, there's a kid wearing red at the wedding.
I believe I saw him too. He's one of the kids that runs in and tells them about the monsters, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Adrian Brody, he discovers one of these creatures in like the suits underneath the floorboards, and immediately he's able to track Bryce Dallas Howard, who's going to the towns. How is he able to do that?
Before we move on, could you explain more about the significance of the colors in this movie? You explained the bad color. What is the bad color? What makes it bad?
The bad color is red. I don't know why the bad color is red. I don't know why the elders tried to put
Wait a
this
minute. You don't know why the bad color's red?
I don't know why they put it in their legendarium. Like why they thought to hey, let's have a bad color. What that has to do with keeping people in the town.
It's the color of blood, and all of the family members and loved ones that died before they created this village died in very violent acts in which it was very blood heavy and ugly. So blood is red. So the bad color is red. But as I was stating earlier, red shows up naturally throughout. It's in the berries that are in the woods and that sort of thing. So they can't outrun human nature, which is epitomized in Adrian Brody's character, who commits a crime in this otherwise idyllic, though fake, village. This is essentially the first crime this place has ever known, and they're not entirely sure what to do about it. Because human nature can be ugly and mean and violent. I would state that I think M. Night Shyamalan is hoping that it's not with other characters in the movie, but I don't want to put words into his mouth. So the red is the bad color because of that. Then yellow is quote unquote the safe color because it's bright. And when they have these lookout towers stationed all around the perimeter of the village to look out for creatures, those we don't speak of and such. And it can be seen easily in the dark because they're pretending it's like 1897 or whatever year it is that they're pretending it is. They need a really bright color to see using just the torches and whatnot they use for candle for light throughout.
Okay.
So that's a safe color because it's very visible at night. And then blue is never 100% stated, but it's the calm, sort of neutral colors that keep showing up in the characters who are either more level-headed or at moments where nothing particularly intense or outlandish or crazy is about to happen.
I didn't notice that about the blue. I can buy. I guess I can buy your explanation about the red.
I remember the blue very starkly being worn by William Hurt in the scene where Lucius confesses.
Well, I noticed the color. I didn't notice it in being juxtaposed with those good characters. But how is Adrian Brody able to hunt down Bryce Dallas Howard in those woods?
I wish I had a better answer than movie magic. I don't have one. It is seen throughout the movie that Adrian Brody comes and goes. His character's name is Noah, by the way, and he suffers from some mental health issues. Never directly stated because, again, 1897, so they're not getting into that. And he is seen going in and out of the woods throughout the entire movie. So, yes, is it ridiculous that he tracked her down specifically? Absolutely. But she's a blind girl going through unfamiliar territory, whereas he's been there hundreds or more times because he freely goes, because he's not as actively watched as other people, because within the village's stories and whatnot, they believe that the character's childlike innocence, even though he's an adult, allows those that we do not speak of to not bother him, because he just comes in and out of the woods to not do anything other than collect berries and get frogs and that sort of thing.
Right, but he doesn't know if she's going north or south or east or west. You know, it's a hell of a
Yeah,
lot
he has
of
no
stuff.
idea, and I grant that. But it is not unreasonable to think that he would just choose a direction and eventually run into her, because there's only so many options to go.
Yeah, there's
Do we
only
know how
10
wide of an
right?
area? Do we know how wide of an area this preserve is?
I believe it's a half a day's walk for William Hurt to get to the edge. So that would be something like 20 miles, I think.
They never state how big the entire preserve is specifically that I recall. No.
No, yeah, it's just the half a day's walk in one direction is the only clue you're given.
Yeah.
Another thing that bothered me about this twist is William Hurt sends Bryce Dallas Howard into this shed and says he cannot explain what she's going to find in there in words. It's the costume of one of those they do not speak of. But I can do it. It's a costume of those we don't speak of. There, I just explained it in words. Why is he sending her in there to like scream? And like another thing, how does she even know what those we do not speak of feel like by touch alone?
Ah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
She's never seen them. She has no idea.
For that one, I would state that one, she was not always blind, so she could have seen drawings of them from before she lost her eyesight. And two, he needs her to feel that it is a costume. He's just saying it.
Well, you can still like tell her and then send her in, like, oh, there's a costume. Go ahead and feel it.
Where's the drama in that, counselor?
It just got lost somewhere in the plot, I guess, Your Honor.
Like most of M. Night Shyamalan's movies, the plot might not make 100% sense, but it's more about the emotional ride and the visual journeys taking you on than smoothing out all the plot holes.
I have one last thing I would like to bring up about the fake twist with the monsters before we move on to the real one, if I may. So Adrian Brody finds this costume and he goes off into the woods. It's already been explained to me at this point that the creatures do not exist. So we see a creature. We don't know it's Adrian Brody yet. And she's scared. She knows that the creatures aren't real, except there's given some sort of hint that maybe he based it on some sort of real creature. So we as audience members in this scene are confused, because what would have been executed better is if we didn't get that revelation from William Hurt, and then when Adrian Brody falls in the pit and dies, then we get the revelation, making much more of an emotional backwards sense making.
I understand where you're going with that point. I 100% disagree, because the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie are told entirely out of order. Like, we'll see just the beginning of a scene, go 10 minutes more, cut back to the rest of a particular scene.
Exactly.
And then jump to something else, and then come back to the finish a scene. Such as when William Hurt's character tells the other elders that Ivy's going to the towns. He doesn't consult them. He just informs them that's what's happening. And that's all we see for that opening moment. And then it gets into their reactions to it, and then so on and so forth as the movie goes. And I think jumping back and forth like that, you're meant to figure out that it's already somebody else, presumably Adrian Brody, based on several context clues, I would argue, has stolen the costume, because we see the floorboards uprooted just before she's attacked, but we don't know that a suit or that Adrian Brody are missing at the time.
No, we're not. And if we're telling it out of order, I think that makes my point even stronger, that he dies and then we flash back to William Hurt saying that the creatures are farce.
But that scene was already told out of order.
Exactly. If you're telling it out of order, at least tell it in a way out of order that makes sense.
Or creates tension. You're arguing if they had not spoiled that. You're arguing prosecution. If they had not spoiled that the monsters were fake before the attack of Brody on Bryce Dallas Howard,
you would Ivy. The scene with suspense. Exactly, Your Honor.
Okay.
Rather than confusion.
I would argue the way it's sold does create tension, because we flash back to her being told they're fake and that it's all a farce after her two escorts, played by Frank Kranz and Michael Pitt, leave her because they can't stomach it. They can't handle being in the woods. They're too scared because they don't know the creatures aren't real. And that's where the magic rock reference from the prosecution, which I was not expecting earlier, comes from. And so we're understanding why she's not afraid, because we've seen her be afraid earlier. The driving point of this is that the character of Lucius Hunt, who's dying right now, quote unquote knows fear in a way none of the other characters in this village will. And because of that fearlessness, he continually throughout the movie asks to go to the towns, as they call the other cities and whatnot around this preserve. And it is the character of Ivy Walker, Bryce Dallas Howard's character, learning that even though you are afraid, you can overcome that. So she's now left alone in the raining woods in an area she doesn't know. She cannot see, minus a few people give off like an aura of color. And that's when we cut to it. So we're building up the spins that she's now alone. She might get attacked. She's not. Then, oh my God, a creature is there. What's going on? And then we find out it's Adrian Brody. I think that is more interesting because we were told they're not real. Then we see they are real. And then you're questioning the entire thing. Was William Hurt lying to her just to make her feel safe in the woods? Or what? And then the or what is, oh, it was Adrian Brody in the suit.
Now, question from the bench here. Question from the bench. We've established that Bryce Dallas Howard is blind, and so she sees some characters with aura. Is Joaquin Phoenix the only one she sees with aura?
Her dad, the William Hurt character, and Adrian Brody's character of Noah.
Okay, so would it not make sense that she could possibly see Adrian Brody's aura even when he's dressed up as the monster?
She does, actually. It's one of the ways that she evades and eventually kills him.
So she knows that's Noah that she's killing?
She's not entirely certain, but she sees a color. It's a very vague color. She can't guarantee that's Noah because the colors necessarily aren't one specific
That
person.
is not in the movie. This is conjecture, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember her actually seeing a color when she sees Brody as the monster.
The way it's filmed, it's almost like it's from her blindness perspective. Like you just see her hand and like you just see the tree and things like that.
Oh, yeah. You never see anybody's color,
right?
Ever. You don't see William Hurt's color or Joaquin Phoenix's color either. They never film it that way. And she repeatedly tells Joaquin Phoenix, even though he never does, to stop asking in a very
No, it's not like that. It's stop asking.
This court sustains that everything Bryce Dallas Howard says is cute and flirty. So,
I just thought of another one, like literally right now. So the elders are attacking the town to like make everyone hide, and we rightly don't see any of the elders hiding in their hiding spaces. But Bryce Dallas Howard is like standing there waiting for Lucius to show up, and she's not concerned at all about her dad, who's in one of the costumes, obviously, but she doesn't know that.
Defense?
Am I missing the point of that?
It's just weird. Like it's a plot hole that like doesn't fill in. It's like no one's concerned about their parents while the creatures are attacking.
I disagree. It's shown that the elders often go off and have meetings under themselves, and there are clearly these little like hidden floorboard like basement things in all of these houses.
They're having meetings during the day, never at night.
That's the time where Lucius is going to make his move because, as established earlier, he never touches her. They were really good friends growing up, and he used to like hold her hand and lead her places. And then one day he stopped, and she knows it's now or never, and that sort of thing. And it was now, and he finally proved his love to her. So she has like this absolute undying faith in that love, and that is the driving point of not just the rest of the movie, but I would say the overarching theme of the movie as well.
I think the prosecution's question is, why is Bryce Dallas Howard not concerned about the whereabouts of her father during this monster attack?
Right.
Because she knows Lucius Hunt is not going home because he just walked her home and is outside.
Yeah, but what about William Hurt?
He's at a meeting inside.
Why is she never worried about where William Hurt is?
Because he's at a meeting inside.
No, they meet during the day. They never meet at night.
Well, I don't know that they never meet at night.
You never see them meet
but the movie doesn't establish it one way.
They meet all hours of the day, apparently.
Why not? What else are they doing?
There are a lot of people running around the village when the monsters attack.
But she's only concerned about one. I don't know. I just asked where my mom is. That's all I'm saying. All right. So let's move on to the real twist. Sort of the elephant in the room one is this big one that they made about planes. Like, oh, you never see planes flying over. And M. Night Shyamalan, like, in a cameo appearance, like, explains to the audience, that's all he does is exposition in his cameo nonstop, that they somehow constructed a no-fly zone over this maybe 20-mile wide, maybe 40 tops preserve. You can see planes from miles and miles. I can see planes approaching DIA from where I live, and that's at least 30 miles. And that doesn't even explain, like, people, like, that even if you could somehow pay off the government to construct a no-fly zone, that doesn't, like, stop people from joyriding. People just fly around and they don't know where no-fly zones are. Crop dusters or whatever.
Actually, you would have to, if you have amateur small plane license, you would still need to adhere to.
You would by the rule of the law, but no one does. I mean, I wouldn't know where no-fly zone is. Fair point. People speed all the time. Like, no-fly zone. What no-fly zone?
Yeah, but the ticket for speeding versus violating airspace is very different.
Okay, well, do you know where you can pay off the government to get a no-fly zone? Because I've never heard of such a thing. I've only heard it for drones. I've looked it up. You can get no-fly zone for drones.
Not a millionaire, Congress, so no. But I do presume if we found a millionaire or billionaire and asked them, they would say, "Yeah, I do that all the time."
No one flies over Batman's house. And the way M. Night Shyamalan brings this up, it's just so weird. Like, he's the guy just asks, like, some offhand question, and he, like, sort of strings it together into, like, oh, this no-fly zone thing that I had to construct like 20 years ago. That was a rough time for me, and the most forced, ham-fisted exposition I've ever seen.
I agree that part is very exposition heavy, which is funny because the first half of the movie that you like so much is very much not exposition heavy. A lot of what we know about the village is simply shown.
Exactly. It's good when it's monsters. It's bad when it's the real twist.
It's their daily lives. We just watch them tend to sheep, farm, wash clothes,
wash dishes,
teach school, whatever they're doing. And so much of how they see the world, like the first time we see the bad color is in, like, a flower or something growing up out of plank, in between planks of a wooden stair, and the two girls cleaning a porch see it, they just pick it up and bury it, and that's your first sign that something's off here. Why are they burying this thing that's red? And I do agree the M. Night Shyamalan thing is very exposition heavy, but it's kind of the only time the movie gets super exposition heavy.
It's like because he's trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It's like, this is my real twist.
No answers for anything going on. And if you want answers for some of the ways, like, how did they make those monsters? Why do the monsters make those noises? Having no answers for anything would be so much worse.
Well, like, take for example The Sixth Sense, which executes a twist brilliantly, where, like, oh, you learn that Bruce Willis is dead, and then all of a sudden, in retrospect,
spoilers,
it all makes sense, right? It's like, oh, he doesn't have his wedding ring on. Yeah, like, everything is, like, kind of falling into place. Or Unbreakable, like that revelation, it makes sense in retrospect. It's even better as a second watch because you kind of know what's going on. And this one, they're just, like, trying to really force that square peg into that round hole because it's not that brilliantly executed.
I disagree. I agree on the exposition part entirely because the movie does a good job of not doing that for the longest time and then gets bogged down there. But I disagree that's square peg for a round hole, mainly because of what I want from the movie. For one, I was working at a movie theater when this film came out, and I guessed the ending while I was watching it for the first time. I was like, oh, they're going to be in, like, modern day and stuff. And I was like, I was right. And I knew outside of, like, the trailers, which didn't tell you that. It didn't bother me, mainly because it's really not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is that this group of however many elders there are, like 8 of them or whatever, decided to make this place. That is the point. The point isn't that they're saying it's 1897 or again whatever year. It's not that they're saying it's a no-fly zone. It's that they were so overcome with grief and so heartbroken from these people that they lost that they decided to make this thing in a desperate, crazy, kind of dumb idea.
Very dumb.
For love. Fair enough. And what we think is a monster movie turns into just following all the ways love will transform you. Some good, some bad, some amazing, and some confusing. For the Noah character, he's not a malicious, evil person. He doesn't entirely understand that what he's doing, whether it's skinning the animals or stabbing Lucius like 5 or 6 times, is morally wrong. He understands he's hurting and he lashes out because he likes Ivy.
As do we all. As do we all.
Together.
Sustained.
And once that's cemented. Sorry, go.
I was sustaining that we all like Bryce Dallas Howard, but did you have a rebuttal to that prosecution? Any of those points?
Well, not so much about the Adrian Brody thing, but as far as like the village thing, like you're sort of right in that, like, oh, the twist is what we're supposed to be thinking about is, was this a right decision, regardless of how stupid it is? It needed to spread that intensity of we're feeling with the scary monsters as a twist in that opposite direction, as far as like, is what these elders doing, is it wrong? Are they psychologically abusing their kids? You're not asking those questions. Instead, you're asking about the no-fly zone. You're asking about how the creatures make grunts. You're not really focused on that because it's just so brief and exposition heavy in M. Night Shyamalan's delivery that it doesn't hit you.
And Defense, would you like to?
I never thought about questioning the no-fly zone or anything you just brought up. And I've seen this movie probably north of 50 times now. I adore it.
I believe you have an entry in the Guinness Book of World Records.
I don't know if they keep those records. But Defense, would you like to continue your points on Adrian Brody and how well he's able to deal with the moral repercussions of what he's doing?
So again, what The Village, the movie, is overall about is all these different kinds of love. Early on, Michael Pitt's character, whose name escapes me at the moment, is on guard duty. And Lucius Hunt, who is, again, set up as like the bravest man in this village, decides to sit with him. Michael Pitt tells him that he's a good friend for doing this because just being up there by himself, Michael Pitt gets scared. So it's just exploring all these different forms of love, whatever form that can take. And the character of Noah, I think, is interesting because it's tragic. He and Ivy are friends, and he and Lucius get along decently. I wouldn't say they're friends, but they're definitely not like enemies or anything. So when this tragedy strikes, it's not out of a sense of evil. It's out of this person, Noah, believing that the only way to make his point, because again, he has mental health issues, he can't speak very well, he knows like kind of only like 10 words, if that.
No hitting.
And... so when he does lash out and in a very violent way, which is set up throughout the movie, we see him like playfully hitting other people with sticks and they're trying to get him to stop and stuff. It is not the same kind of evil that the elders encountered before they created the village. It's something different, and that's the heartbreak.
No, they encountered murder, didn't they? I know one of the ladies did. Like, her sister was murdered and left in a dumpster or something.
Oh, yeah, no. But that's before the village.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is in the village. They created this, what they want to be a harmonious, safe place for everybody. But sickness, old age, whatever else has killed the rest of these
psychological
people's families.
torment.
Psychological torment, yes. And so when the character of Noah does this unspeakably heinous crime against Lucius in this idyllic village, it's not the same sort of thing. It is not a power grab. It is not to prove that I am better than you. It's not out of a sense of revenge as it is for when William Hurt's father's character is killed by his business partner, which is the reason he's in this counseling center where they all meet. It is because he has no other avenue to express himself, and that's the tragedy. The tragedy there is that they were friends, and this is what breaks them apart. And again, that's following the it's sort of an antithesis to the Michael Pitt thing I was talking about earlier, where they were good friends, and this minus before his death changes their dynamic 100%, up to the point to where Adrian Brody is killed. But again, Bryce Dallas Howard does not 100% know that that's him in that suit at the time. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. I do buy that. And I do agree that cinematography is great throughout it. It's just like the plot around it is just bonkers, and I can't get my head around like these plot holes.
I mean, it was Roger Deakins who did the cinematography, so of course it's going to look good. But I would also argue that all of M. Night Shyamalan's movies look good. Some are way too stupid, even compared to this movie.
It's a scale for sure.
Like, they all have like moments of visual interest, if that makes sense. But, you know, we're not talking about his filmography as a whole. Let's focus on this movie.
Thank you. Mr. Prosecutor, do you have any additional points to make?
I believe I do. Just a minute. Okay, so when the elders die, what's the plan? Like, are they going to like induct someone like these children into like their false narrative about, hey, you got to continue dressing up as creatures and scaring your kids for staying here because there's evils out there?
That's an excellent question. And I don't have an answer, and neither do they. And they say they don't have an answer. That is directly brought up as a, did we think we were going to live forever? Did you plan on just doing this for all time?
I mean, if I were one of those kids and I was like, you know, pulled aside in secrecy and then told all this, I'd be angry myself. I think most people would be.
It makes sense. Again, the question is not whether the monsters are real. It's whether creating the village, even out of a desperate sense of hope and love, was a good idea. And I would argue in the end, it wasn't. But that's not the point. The point was they did create it. Here's what happened.
And how are they going to get, like, how many generations, even if they do get to induct some of the kids into this, like on the outside world, like how much money did this guy drop and plan on like saying like this thing's going to be completely foolproof for at least like 3 or 4 generations? Like that's just impossible.
That is, I agree with that. All we know about that is that it's the Walker Nature Preservation and thus Ivy Walker. It is her grandpa, great grandpa, I forget, who set all this up and this thing. And it's that vast fortune that allows them to make the village and keep the preservation going. We don't know how much money's left. We don't know what's going on with that money or anything like that. Which is
you just know it was a rough time for M. Night Shyamalan's character when the planes flew over.
Yeah. That's why at the end, Ivy Walker is successful. She gets medicine to help save Lucius's life. And that's where the movie ends. We don't know if she was successful. We don't know if the medicines actually worked.
Then we get a killer violin solo. I'll cede that point as well.
It is very much about these people were grieving. They came up with this crazy idea out of love, and the crazy idea has hit a bubble. The bubble bursts. Now what happens? That's what's going on in the movie. So when they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next, Adrian Brody's character dying, they say, makes their stories real. But I would concede that that's only going to last another 1 or 2 generations.
Tops.
That's it.
If that.
Tops. This is going to like flatline and degrade at some point, as well it should.
That's
the point, was to be able to heal and teach others that there's a better way, and it almost worked.
If it weren't for those rotten kids.
We haven't heard much of
Your Honor.
We haven't heard much of a description of these monsters. Would someone mind describing these creatures?
Oh, they're very weird looking. They're just red cloaks with sticks pointing out. That's about it.
They're like humanoid porcupines on steroids.
I mean, if I saw this, I'm not thinking it's a real creature. I'm thinking that's a guy in a red cloak
wearing
with
a Little Red Riding Hood cloak.
Well, I believe besides the elders, no one else has ever been outside of the village, right?
Adrian Brody,
That is-
I guess.
Technically, but he's never been outside of the woods, so he's never seen the real world.
Right, yeah. Besides the elders, they've never seen the real world, so they wouldn't know what a fake monster looked like versus a real monster.
Correct.
The prosecution is rested, Your Honor.
All right, sounds good. Mr. Defense, do you have any points you'd like to bring up in support of your case?
One weird side note, M. Night Shyamalan loved working with Bryce Dallas Howard so much on this movie. He wrote the lead in his next film, Lady in the Water, with her in mind beforehand.
To be fair, I would enjoy working with Bryce Dallas Howard too.
Yeah, who could blame him?
Yeah, wouldn't everybody? She's amazing and fantastic. And the only other thing I really do want to bring up is the sound design throughout the film is amazing. Amazing. Going back to the sequence where Noah stabs Lucius, there's a little bit of dialogue between the two before he gets stabbed. And then all the sound except for the howling wind cuts out. So all you're hearing is the wind. You're not hearing the heavy breathing or the gurgling of like saliva and blood like building up in Lucius's throat. You're not hearing whatever noises or things Noah is saying. You're just hearing the wind. And watching that happen with just hearing the wind makes it much more ominous and creepy. Like almost like it's a force of nature. This kind of thing is inevitable no matter where you live, which I would argue further cements my point that the red coming up naturally and everything is you can't outrun human nature, and some of human nature is just cruel and mean, even if they don't mean to be.
Very good. Any additional points, or is the defense resting?
I love the actors. We didn't really get into that too much. I loved all the acting.
You loved what you said. Stop asking.
I liked that. I thought it was cute and fun, and
yeah,
because she's not like that with anybody else. It's just with him. Her demeanor changes. The way she holds herself changes. It's a fun little thing where she's intentionally doing it because he's so quiet. She's dragging out her words to just get him to do anything. Take the bait. Jump onto it. And I think that really works. I love them.
What about like William Hurt when he goes, what manner of spectacle is this so captivating? I should keep it in my pocket.
I like William Hurt in this movie. I am on record as having hated A History of Violence, in part because I found his performance in it so weird and not fitting with the rest of that movie when he shows up in the final 30 minutes. That I was doing all right. It took me out of the entire film, right? Here, though, he's very level-headed and calm. And even in moments where you think he's going to be very emotional and driven, he's really not, except for one amazing sequence with him and Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver plays
Alice.
Lucius Hunt.
And she plays his mother barely. Like she's like all in this film all of like 2 minutes.
She's expensive.
Yeah, she does not have a massive role. I imagine there's several deleted scenes with her somewhere.
Stringing up chimes in the woods.
Her husband, Lucius Hunt's dad, is the one who was killed. And that's what brought her to the Greek counseling. So she meets the William Hurt character after he's been married and everything. But they have this attraction that goes through the entire movie. So he goes to tell her that he's sending Ivy into the woods to the towns to help save Lucius. And he tells her, it's all I can give you. Because he's a moral man. He's not going to cheat on his wife or anything. But it's clear that he wants more from that relationship and can't have it. And the way he says it is both so noble and heartbreaking that you're like, all right, this is like almost what you want. Because I'm not saying I wanted him to cheat on his wife, but it's clear these two are so into each other that you kind of want it to happen. And that he's strong enough to make it not happen. And both actors deliver that scene so well. After he says that, they get real close and you don't know what's going to happen. And he just leaves. Like you think they're going to kiss or something and he leaves. It's such a good scene.
How about Joaquin Phoenix's performance?
I really like him here. In Signs, he was much more the comedic, fun character, right? Wearing the tinfoil hats and everything. Here, he's a very quiet person, and he does a lot of his acting just with furtive glances, looks, or like body language, and it's really intense and it works very well. My second favorite scene in the movie is after the wedding, and some disaster sort of ruins the wedding, and so Lucius Hunt is sitting on the Walker's front porch. Bryce Dallas Howard sees his color, goes outside, and they have this conversation, and it's the most he talks the entire movie. And just the way they're going back and forth when he says, she's asking why he never says what's in his mind, and he lets it all out at once. And you're like, oh, this is what he's waiting for. He just needs something strong enough to motivate him. And their chemistry is so good that they really don't share that many scenes together for this to really be like the center of the romance. But you buy it and you want them to be together, and they work so well. It's kind of amazing, really. It's not the best chemistry in the world. Modern day chemistry, that belongs to Matt Damon and Emily Blunt in the Adjustment Bureau. But it's a whole different story. But it's up there, in my opinion.
All right, great. Any further points?
No, I rest. The defense rests.
All right. Well, both the prosecution and defense have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Prosecution, you're up first.
The Village is undoubtedly a good-looking film with some decent performances, but as was proven in The People vs. Final Fantasy: The Spirit Within, good visuals and good acting apparently does not a good film make.
I object. That episode hasn't been released yet, so I can't rebut to anything in it.
You can't object to the closing.
But I'm really not all that bitter about it. You just gotta let it go. That's all. You gotta let it go. Anyway, if you fried that film, jury members, then by precedent, you must fry this film as well. Because stepping just beyond those cozy boundaries, much like this film, nothing but disappointment lies outside for The Village. The only solace I find is that the movie tried very hard to convince me that people have feelings for other people, and you can spot this by the fact that they never touch the one that they admire. Fortunately for me, that means every woman in existence is harboring feelings for me. And I proclaim loudly here in this courtroom to Karen Gillan, who has never touched me, the feeling is mutual. I love you, Karen Gillan. I love you. Like the day is long. I love you more than the sun and moon together. And if you feel the same way, then we should not hide it any longer. It's a gift, love is. We should be thankful. We should bellow it out with all the breath in our lungs. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, jury members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prosecution, for the most bitter, sad, and desperate closing arguments this court has seen yet. Mr. Defense, I'm sure
people listening won't be able to see him crying on his bed, unfortunately.
Yeah, with his cardboard cutout of Karen Gillan. Mr. Defense, I can only imagine that what you're about to say is less bitter, and you may present your closing argument.
When this court saw the case of the house that Jack built, it determined that a movie cannot be guilty even if the creator is. The creator admits to being guilty to agreeing to terrible marketing for this film. The Village was, in fact, terribly marketed. It is nothing as they advertise. It is not a horror feature. It does not really delve into monsters. And if that's what you're expecting, you will be disappointed. But if this movie had been made by somebody unknown, first or second movie, and not M. Night Shyamalan, and everybody went into it with fresh eyes, and there was less marketing to it, would it still work, presuming it was made the exact same way, with the exact same cast, exact same score, and all that? I say yes. Yes, it is. Because it is not those things, and it's a searing, intimate look at the way love drives you to madness, drives you to hope, drives you to jealousy, and makes you do things you didn't know you were capable of, makes you do things that were probably not the best idea to begin with, and forces you to deal with heartache and hardship in ways you aren't comfortable with, and then makes you examine all of that in a prism of using horror tropes to hook in the viewer just to see what would happen, essentially. The creatures are there as a way of explaining why they don't know they're in the woods, and that's it. It's just a legend. It's the story we tell ourselves. But do we tell ourselves the stories to protect us or the ones we love? And I feel that's the question the movie leaves you ending. Will the village continue? No. But if you tell yourself this story, was it worth being told? Yes.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard, Mr. Rodriguez, Big Papa Schlender.
Thank you.
You have all heard the facts concerning the case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Well, go on, get off with ya.
All right, jury, it's our job to decide whether the film is guilty of being bad. Let's go around counterclockwise. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, I'm really glad that we're doing this, because before we do every movie, I put up like a graphic on Facebook just to kind of test the waters and see what the reaction is. And the village is split right down the middle between those who absolutely love it and those who think that it's the worst cinematic affront to decency ever. And when it came out in 2004, it was the first M. Night Shyamalan movie that I didn't see in the theater, simply because I was and still am what's called a puss. Too scared. And I knew what the twist was maybe like 6 months later, and I watched it for the first time last week, and knowing the twist did not hamper my enjoyment of it, which is weird. And the biggest problem, I think, going into it is that for the first 50 minutes, none of the monster stuff is scary. And even if they're not actually monsters, we're supposed to think that they are in the moment, and that is a failure on the movie's part. But other than that, this movie is fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. Everybody makes some damn good points. Especially like that we had a discussion about marketing and expectations, because for me, like I said, going into this, the marketing did not even factor into it. So I'm curious to hear what you guys, how you came into it.
As far as the marketing, I remember the trailer, and yeah, basically, I think that the prosecution was right. It did mostly promise you Joaquin Phoenix wandering around in the woods with monsters. I was offended by the prosecution's use of promising us a Bryce Dallas Howard-less film, which I don't, because I don't know why anyone would want that.
Oh God, no.
Right? Exactly. I'm happy she basically takes over as the protagonist in this film. I mean, I can't remember how I went into it, but I got to say, in hindsight, I don't mind the marketing. I'm okay with the trailer swerving me, and if that's the plan, if that's the swerve, I think there's a difference between swerving and false advertising. And to me, this was a swerve. The trailer was supposed to make you come in and think you're going to see a period piece, and you're not. And that's the point. That's the game. That's the trick. It can't tell you. So I think it's trying to make you think you're entering into a period horror film. I disagree about it not being scary. I think the monsters look stupid, but I think there is some real tension of especially before you ever see them, like when they're just nameless horrors and something's out in the woods, and Jesse Eisenberg's hanging out on a stump, trying to dare them to attack him and see how long he can last. I think that stuff's. I think it's scary. I do, but then you see the monster and you're like, oh, it's kind of dumb, isn't it? Dylan, what did you think of?
I want to know
into it.
Okay, so yeah. So to answer Ryan's question, I did see it in the theater. I don't recall
Me
the
too.
marketing too much. I just knew that M. Night Shyamalan was freaking huge after The Sixth Sense, and everyone was super excited about what he was going to do. So I think the marketing was incidental. I mean, they could have just said the next M. Night Shyamalan movie, and everyone was going to go see it. So I don't recall the marketing.
Did.
I mean, they practically did, right? So I don't think the marketing swayed me one way or the other. I remember having seen it in the theater, like not really enjoying it very much, even though I liked a lot of the actors in it. Like we talked about the performances and stuff being very good. And then I thought the second twist, as how we're describing them being in modern day, was just, it was very ham-fistedly handed at the end. And I was like, oh boy. And so then when I rewatched it for the case today, I liked knowing the twists ahead of time, because I liked hearing how that affected how I viewed some of the performances. Like I really liked Adrian Brody's performance a lot more. I really liked, but I thought it was like strange though that in moments where only us, the audience, are seeing the elders talk, they're still keeping up the charade so forcefully. You know what I mean? It's like there's no like winks and nudges, but maybe that could all be by design as well. So I did like it a lot more.
The big one I remember of that you're saying is like there's the moment where Hurt and Sigourney Weaver are like out by the barn after all the livestock have been killed, and she's like, a coyote couldn't have done this and all that, and that's because they don't know who's taken and killed the animals.
Yeah, and that's true. And then William Hurt actually, and this is something Maynard and I were talking about, William Hurt actually says to his blind daughter, like, I think it's one of the elders. I thought that would be very interesting to explore. Like if Brandon Gleeson, because he's burying his son at the beginning, if he finally snapped and he's the one who's going crazy, and instead they just kind of cobbled it together to pin it on Adrian Brody, presumably because of his mental disability, which is an interesting way of handling disability, looking at like the innocence, but also the violence that can be in there. Would have been an interesting point worth exploring, but it was just as easily glossed over, I suppose. So we don't really have to worry about it. Yeah, exactly. It
continues it continues the trope of watch out for mentally challenged people; they'll kill you. And I'm fucking sick of that. Just done with it.
I can see that, especially with the knife bit. But as far as him killing the animals, the thing is that he thinks he's playing a game. He thinks he's playing monster, and he's been told the monsters are meat eaters, they're killers, and so he just thinks he's playing monster. He's playing make believe. He's a monster, and if he's a monster, he would kill. The knife thing, I think, it's strange because, I mean, who would have ever taught him the concept of murder in that way?
And not just that, but like his performance, pulling, like literally doing the most unnaturalistic mentally challenged person I think I've seen on film in a long time. And that's not entirely Adrian Brody's fault. That is definitely part Shyamalan telling him, no, push it. Go further. Go a little further. Go way past the point that you really need to go.
I might have to push back on that a bit, Ryan. I have some personal history with people with mental disabilities, and I don't think Adrian Brody's characterization of it was completely out of line, especially because when I viewed it, like he knew the secret of the monsters not being real at some point, and that made it more fun for him having this secret. So I think his performance stands very strongly and will be remembered favorably for a long time. But if we can,
we don't know what disability he has, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. We really do.
That it's ill-defined, and I don't think that really Shyamalan cares about the complexity of that. I think that he's just taking a trope and kind of extending it. It's not the first time that this has been done, and it's not the most egregious time.
Well, no, but I think I agree with you that
the massacre at the end of Rain Man was much worse.
No, I agree with you that Shyamalan doesn't really care about how complex it could and should be, because I think that would have been more interesting for the movie, but it doesn't make that a bad part of the movie. I would like to shift to the prosecution's. He really hung his hat on the idea of the movie being about love, and I thought when he was presenting it, he made me think
the
defense. I'm sorry, you're right. The defense hung his hat on it being about love, and it really made me think about when you're watching it, you keep thinking like, oh, this village, this idea, it's so flimsy, it's going to fall apart. And then he's saying like, yeah, of course it is. I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, like it wouldn't work. And that's kind of the point. But when you accept that, like this was a very rash thing to do, that's not going to pan out well in the long run, it really makes those other plot holes all the more glaring. It doesn't ameliorate them at all, because then it's like, well, hold on a minute, this really wasn't that well thought through. Something the prosecution said, like they would see planes at greater distance, like the fly zone probably would be violated. Like they didn't have radar or satellites. They had a guy in a Jeep driving around a fence. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, yeah, you lousy planes, get off my property. I mean, it's just not gonna work. And then like,
they did say they had guardhouses like every 10 miles. So there is presumably more Jeeps.
No, I can accept that to a point, but I'm just saying, like, I think if you want to accept the idea that this was a rash decision made out of love, that there would be more mistakes, that there is a clock on it, if you will. Like, it's not gonna. And I agree with. I think the consensus tend to be like it maybe has half a generation more. I mean, I think maybe Bryce Dallas Howard might start telling people that the monsters aren't real. You know what I mean? Because
I think we can. Well, she probably won't, because she doesn't know the monsters aren't real. As far as we argued earlier in the case whether she saw Noah's color or not. I don't remember if they actually talked about whether she can see Noah's color. But as far as I'm concerned, I think she believes, and actually they say it at the end. She says she was attacked by a creature in the woods. She thinks that those creatures are there, and that one attacked her, and she dropped it down a hole. I don't think she is. She's blind, and all she can hear is something came after her.
Movie that they don't explain it very well. So does that mean William Hurt is gonna?
There is that final line at the end where she says she was attacked by a creature. We can take that at face value, I think.
Yeah, because she's telling that to everyone in the town, so maybe she wants to keep the charade up for now. Or if she really believes it, then William Hurt's going to have to walk everything back and explain it all again, but differently. It's just I don't know if I buy that, to be honest with you. And
I don't know. At the end of the day, we're not exactly here to determine whether William Hurt's village plan is good. We can accept that might be bad, but the question is the movie about his village experiment good or bad? Even if the experiment is a failure.
And I think the plot hole, if we want to accept the defense's premise, it makes the plot holes all the more glaring and hard to reconcile. And that's where I'm coming down on it right now.
Well, I mean, ultimately, is Shyamalan's idea good? Not is William Hurt's idea good? And this movie is definitely like, in terms of Shyamalan peak visuals, this is absolutely it. It is possibly, up to this point, the most cinematic thing that he's done, but it's also
I see that.
It's peak Shyamalan up his own ass, and walking into it going like, well, I could just put my name on it, and not only do I have one twist, I got two twists.
Wait, have you seen Lady in the Water yet?
I have not.
Okay, he's okay.
Really
Sorry,
up his own ass in Lady in the Water.
Really goes up his own ass on that one.
And I like Lady in the Water too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, like he makes himself like the hero of this universe or something. Like it's.
I read about that part. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. So but I'll agree with you. I think visually, this probably is his peak. Only because Signs is so fucking dark most of the time.
And
can't
like shooting with natural light, like that is like Barry Lyndon shit. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. One thing that we didn't mention is like that neither side mentioned is that the bad color red is a very important color to Shyamalan. It's a color that he almost kept entirely out of The Sixth Sense. There's only a few elements of red in The Sixth Sense, and they're all very I think the door to the church is red. It's all very specific things. So Shyamalan likes to have these little threads through his thing, right? Like water is always freaking important in his movies, and
especially in one of them.
Yeah,
in two of them,
himself.
It's the weakness. It's the weakness of in Unbreakable, and it's the weakness of the aliens.
I forgot about
and I think the kid's getting up to get a glass of water when the really scary ghost happens in Sixth Sense.
Yes.
So there's water stuff going through, and I did see that documentary that the defense mentioned earlier about Shyamalan. It is just
so bad.
Again, that was a point where I was a really big Shyamalan mark when this movie came out.
Me too.
Where I thought he's going to be the biggest director of our generation for a while. He's going to take over where Tarantino left off. He's going to be
Hitchcock.
the guy. I think he wanted to be Hitchcock, but you need to get a lot of shit under your belt before you can be Hitchcock. You got to get like a couple dozen great movies under your belt. So I was at least thinking Tarantino, and then The Village is kind of the first time he wavers, and maybe I'll say even stumbles a bit. We can certainly discuss whether the Brody character is a fair representation of that kind of character. I don't think it's outlandish. I think it's big. It's certainly big, and that's the point. He sticks out like a sore thumb in this village, where everyone else is, kind of calm and reasonable. He's wild, and I don't know if in an original draft he was supposed to be a child, like just a troublemaker child who would do these kind of things. And probably they were like, hey, you can't drop a child down a hole and kill him. And he's like, fine, I'll make him an adult, with the mind of a child. And that's how, he got it past studio thing. So it'd be interesting to see. My
biggest problem with that is that it's the level of subtlety is like Tropic Thunder level, except Tropic Thunder was being satirical and completely playing into the trope in order to expose how ultimately inhuman it is. And I have had, they've passed away, but I've had family members with mental illness, and not just mental illness, but being mentally challenged. And it is, in 2004, okay, I guess we're not as with it as we currently are, even though we're not
as woke.
Yeah, we're not as woke, sure. But that's not really an excuse. That's kind of like that saying, well, it's not as bad as it could have been, which is a horseshit kind of mea culpa. But I don't know. I mean, it's not enough to make me say that it's a guilty movie, but it is something that weighs on my head anytime I think about it. And I don't.
Yeah, I'm just there from here where you're getting there, Ryan. I respect that that's where you're coming down on it, but I just don't see it the same way. But I'm also thinking the movie's guilty too, so it's kind of funny.
Well, I mean, it's fine. I mean, we don't have to agree on that. That's perfectly fine.
But if you disagree with Ryan, there's a strong chance you're wrong. This one is I can't deny that there is a lot of bad stuff in this movie. I think overall the writing is bad in this movie. And I thought the prosecution made a really strong point in that the reveals come too early and kind of sabotage the tension. If she goes into those woods with the monsters and we still think the monsters are real, you've got a lot more tension. Yeah. And if we didn't get that reveal until after Adrian Brody plummets down a hole, then it would be more powerful. So that's not the way I felt when I watched it, but then he brought up that point, and that's true. It kind of sabotaged its own tension and suspense. And in a film that should, in a guy who basically was supposed to be the master of suspense at that point, or wanted to be, that's a big problem. Yeah. The performances are wonderful. The cinematography is wonderful. The score is amazing. It was nominated. It is an aesthetically beautiful movie. Yeah. But at the end of the day, maybe the story is stupid.
It looks good, but you can't bite into it.
Maybe the story is stupid. It bugs me because I like the themes. I like the themes of love. I especially like the themes of wanting to escape modern society, and maybe how that's impossible. But wanting to do it, that resonates with me.
But I like that you touched upon the first twist, because honestly, that is my biggest problem with the film. Ultimately, it is pretty much the only really deciding factor in this, because I actually kind of enjoyed this. But that first twist is so ill-timed that when she goes out of the woods and then there's a monster out there chasing her, even though we know that monsters aren't real, then what the hell are we watching?
And it looks stupid.
Yes, it does.
I'll say that.
It's not even shot well, and that's weird, because everything else in the movie is to that point.
Yeah.
But it's an issue of him blowing his wad too fast and thinking, well, I'm going to get him with the second one. That's going to be the one that they remember. That's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. I can do whatever I want with the first. And it's a miscalculation that is possibly fatal.
Yeah, I mean, I like their relationship. So I think when the film is about love, I think some of those points are good. But yeah, it really shoots itself in the foot in the middle of the movie there. And then it's It's kind of eye-rolly all the way to the end, including the cameo, which is full of exposition. I agree with that.
The commentary on modern society, too, gets a little muddled because the guy she meets is a stand-up gentleman who helps her out. You know what I mean? So it's like she doesn't go
That was unrealistic. He should have beat her up and took her stick.
No, but that's what I'm saying, though. It's like the outside world isn't as mean and cruel, you know, but I guess maybe that's part of the point.
I think that's the point. But remember, Shyamalan is still a dick.
Yeah.
So she just kind of lucked out and met one decent dude, and I think that maybe that's it. There's some decent people, some Kevins in the world, and then there's some M. Night Shyamalans who are dicks.
Also,
and you can see
when the defense brought up redoing the whole movie with a different director but the same cast, I was still imagining Shyamalan as the park ranger, even though it's a different director and a different style.
I do have a question when it comes to characters.
No one else could direct this, though, by the way. No one else could direct this.
Now,
this is pure Shyamalan. Go on, Ryan.
Did I hear correctly in hearing that Judy Greer's character is named Kitty?
Kitty, yeah.
So is this connected to Arrested Development? In which she plays Kitty Sanchez?
I don't think so.
Her long-lost sister who did not go to the village.
I mean, Bryce Dallas Howard is the daughter of Ron Howard, who's the narrator of Arrested Development. Oh.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
All right.
Bryce Dallas Howard are sisters in this, and so it's also connected to Jurassic World. I'm out.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. She's Judy Greer's sister in Jurassic World as well.
I think we owe the court a verdict.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm having a hard time. You sound like you're guilty, Dylan, and I think Ryan may be guilty too. So it may not matter what I think.
It always matters what you think, Maynard.
I'm almost flip a coiny where it's like I like the themes, but I don't like the story that tries to present them. I don't think it
made the better arguments in court.
Well. Actually, I thought the defense's arguments were better, but I don't know that the story. Prosecution did have that good shot across the bow about the timing of the things. God damn.
Well, Ryan, are you ready to lock in a verdict for yourself?
Yes, I have mine locked in.
Ryan, where are you going? What are you doing?
Well, even though it has a fatal flaw, that we're supposed to be here to prove that it's guilty of being a bad movie, and I like too much of it. It is innocent of being a bad movie.
Ooh, twist!
So it is up to freaking.
Hey, wait, the twist of the Shyamalan episode. This is good stuff. It is up to you, then. Damn it!
Listen, I like M. Night Shyamalan. I like the performances. I like the cinematography. I like the music. I like the themes. The story's dumb. The twist is ill-timed, but I'm going not guilty. I love M. Night Shyamalan. I'm sorry.
All right, then. A split decision, but one that was reached admirably. Let's go tell the judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We find this film not guilty.
C'est la vie. Well fought, sir. Well fought.
Oh, having on pins and needles there, guys.
That's how we do it here.
Very good. Then this film is not guilty, and we sentence Mr. Shyamalan to returning to form and making more movies like Unbreakable and like Split, but not like Glass. Court is adjourned.
This is Blank Blankerson reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Mr. Haslar, would you care to share your thoughts on today's verdict?
Well, to quote the great Dylan D. defense, I believe in the Reels of Justice. I was court appointed, and I do enjoy this film to an extent, although the twist in like the second half is kind of dumb, but it's not bad. There's just too much prettiness and good acting going on. So I do believe justice was served today.
Thank you. And here comes Mr. LePire. Mr. LePire, how did you feel about the jury's verdict?
I was relieved and a little bit shocked. The prosecution brought up points I never considered until hearing him talk about these issues, such as the poor timing of the first twist. But I maintain that the themes and the ideas and just the clear passion put into the movie is what makes it so engaging and watchable. And I'm happy to see that justice was served here today.
Thank you very much. That's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
All right. I love a good Shyamalan movie. I'm sorry.
That was
You also love a bad
man.
guy.
There's
I
not
really
enough of them.
thought
There's
that
not
guilty.
enough of them.
a good
Well
case.
fought.
That was a good
Well
case.
fought.
You know, I have a feeling that if I also watched this movie 50 times, I would think it's good.
I bet I've seen it about a dozen times, probably. You know, I know I picked it up when it came out, and there's definitely stuff that when I watch it this time and listening to a case that I hadn't considered before. And I agree, maybe just a little bit of different editing, moving that twist would have made her whole trek through the woods more scary and terrifying.
Yes.
Maybe he just wanted to avoid two twists coming right back to back like that. But maybe that would have been better. The double twister could have been quite successful. But Bobby did a wonderful job, and congratulations.
Yes.
Hey.
So what do you got going on? What's keeping you busy these days?
I am one of the editors and a writer over at Film Threat.
Nice.
Nice.
So you guys can check out all my reviews there and that sort of thing. And that takes up most of my day, aside from the day job, which is at Starbucks. And, you know, I just stay up late writing using that coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
No, hopefully tons of coffee. That's awesome. Yeah, we love Film Threat and working at Film Threat. Hopefully you'll have some awesome recommendations for our viewers here.
I thought you were saying we're going to film threaten you.
Let's go back so I can say that we're going to film threaten you. No, but what kind of recommendations do you got for us, Bobby?
Real quick before we do that, I saw The Village 3 times in theaters alone.
Oh wow! Well, you worked there though.
I did. At the time, it was a Regal Cinemas. Yeah, I worked there at the
So,
time.
but did you love the movie immediately, like when you first saw it, or did it kind of?
Yeah. It was Thursday night. It was employees only screening after this was still like film reels, not digital production.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to build it up, and then we had to watch to make sure it was built right and didn't snag and that sort of thing. So yeah, I loved it right away.
Awesome.
And it was 72 degrees outside. Wind from the southeast.
No, I admire your passion for it too, and the comparison to Ghostbusters. I like that a lot.
I knew that was definitely some pandering there.
No, it's just Ghostbusters hits all the beats of a horror movie, but is not a horror movie.
filmed
You
in
tell
one,
me it's
not
my
written.
favorite movie of all time. I've seen it like.
I didn't know that.
See, no, he did. He knew because Dylan says it every episode.
You know, my mom saw Ghostbusters 3 times with me in utero. So there you go. It all
Your mom's awesome, Ben. Hi, Ben's mom. Oh, and hi, my mom
That's
too.
mom.
I know she actually listens. So
That's true.
Your mom's a
All right.
man,
Well,
I did.
can we let Bobby give us some recommendations here?
oh yes, please.
I have two. One is Daimajin, because you guys have dropped the ball in recommending this every episode.
I love this guy.
Honestly, amazing.
What are you guys
I did not
doing?
recommend that yet.
Oh, I thought we had recommended Daimajin. We've talked about
Yeah,
it.
Rob,
haven't we?
You recommended it like 2 or 3 times in a row.
Perfect.
And then like the last 2 or 3 episodes, you stopped recommending it. And that's just hurting me on the inside.
Everyone
I
should
love all-
still totally see Daimajin. See all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Every time I
Yeah.
hear it, I still hear it Diamond Jim. Like it always like
Mm.
I might have jumped back to Diamond Jim.
Very expensive spicy beef snacks. Diamond Jims.
My actual recommendation is on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure if it's on other streaming services. It's called Yamasong, March of the Hollows, Yamasong.
Yamasong.
On Amazon Prime, you can find the short that this is a pseudo sequel to. That's just called Yamasong. I'm talking about the feature length movie just called Yamasong March of the Hollows. And it is a puppet fantasy adventure wherein a bunch of robots who are imprisoned on a moon-like structure crash land onto the titular planet and start essentially creating a genocide of the native species there and making them into robots. So the one good robot creature, they're called Hollows, teams up with a tortoise warrior to stop the evil robots.
Did you say they were puppets?
Yeah, it's puppets. Yeah,
Jesus.
it's rod puppets on.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's written and directed by Sam Koji Hale, put out by Dark Dunes Productions, who did Harbinger Down and the Hex Studio stuff. And then it's got Nathan Fillion, Abigail Breslin, Whoopi Goldberg. Oh my God, I forgot his name. Sulu.
George
George
Takei.
George Takei, Peter Weller, Frida Pinto. The cast is crazy. It's awesome fun. If you guys like things like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, Yamasawa Martel Hollows is fantastic.
That's awesome. No, that's definitely something I'm going to have to check out. I guess I'm next because I was judge. I can't remember what streaming service I watched it on. It might be Netflix. But it's called The Pool, but it's from 2014. It's not the 2018 one. It's 2014, The Pool, and it's actually Danish. So I believe it's called Da Pool. But I think you can find it under The Pool. But it's kind of another Lost in the Woods, not fantasy, but supernatural. It's like some supernatural elements to it, basically about a family. I think it's a pair of families that goes out camping. Bad shit happens to them. That's my favorite kind of horror movie. I love horror movies where people get lost in the woods because I've been lost in the woods and it's terrifying. So check out The Pool. And it's Danish, so it's subtitled, so you get to read, Ben. I know you love that.
Oh.
Dylan, what do you got?
Okay, actually, I was thinking about it. It's a newer movie, so I think you would have to rent it on demand somewhere. I don't think it's on anything yet. It's called Archive. It's about a solitary scientist who lives with his two robot pals as he's making a third robot pal. And they riff movie.
Ambot or Gypsy or what?
That sounds like Mystery Science Theater 3000.
No, they actually don't riff movies, but it's a neat movie if you like exploring the questions of artificial intelligence and and I don't want to say too much. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's an appropriate pick for an M. Night Shyamalan episode.
Okay.
And Theo James is amazing in it.
Yeah. Oh no, everyone's great in it too. It's really good. And like I said, it just came out, so I think you'd have to throw down some cash to see it right now on just one of the on-demand services, like you could rent it off Amazon or something.
Cash money.
Yeah.
Ryan, what do you got for us?
I will recommend another movie that seems to divide people between loving it and hating it, although a lot more people hate it than they love it. It is Cameron Crowe's brilliant, misunderstood Vanilla Sky. I love this movie.
It's pretty good. I like it.
I love Tom Cruise, so that's got to count for something.
I like most of the movie.
Yeah, I can see that there are some bad choices in it, but I think
that's how I feel about The Village. I love most of it.
The last 15 minutes in particular, I think, resonate with me probably more than any other movie that I saw that year. So, Vanilla Sky.
Huh.
I never saw it, and I can't guarantee I will, because I don't think there's any robots in it.
Well,
that's why if they're Archive, I know you'll watch it.
Do you only watch movies with robots?
Not only watch, but it really helps. Ben, what do you got? Some robots?
No robots.
Fuck.
One of my favorite psychological thrillers is Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure. It's sort of X-File-ish. We got a serial killer that like makes some sort of motion with his hands and gets people to off themselves. And the reason is something I don't want to spoil, but it's very interesting, very dark, and very atmospheric.
So he gets people off with his hands?
That's what I heard. Good night, everyone.
That's what I heard. Count it. Oh, Ben.
Better than tentacles, at least. My God.
Yeah, no tentacles involved,
tentacles
I assume.
I don't.
Not in this one. Yeah, you don't think.
What a refreshing change.
All right, cool. So that's lots of stuff for people to check out. We had a great case today. Bobby, thanks for joining us. I hope you come back some other time.
Yes.
I would love to. I had a blast. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. And with that, we're all out of show this week. We hope you'll join us next time as the reels of justice keep turning.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.